You're listening to Dairy Voice by Dairy Business News, a podcast exclusively for the dairy industry.
One of our sponsors of the Dairy Voice podcast is National DHIA. NDHIA ensures information accuracy and represents their members' interests. They are the direct voice for the dairy information industry. To find out more, go to dhia.org.
If you raise calves, you know you can't prevent stress, but you can give your calves the boost they need to rise above challenging conditions. Nurture Boost is a uniquely formulated feed additive that supports calf lung health and enhances overall immunity to elevate your calves' ability to withstand stress. Boost your calves for better performance at boostyourcalves.com.
Well, good morning. Welcome to another edition of our podcast series for Showbox Sires on dairy business. It is a gorgeous morning in Boseman, Montana, and I'm sitting here at one of the most iconic breeder herds in the Mountain West. I'm at Vue Holsteins with the Tatarka family, and I'm sitting here on the porch of Mountain View Dairy this morning with Mr. Tatarka, and we're going to talk cows for the next few minutes. I told him as we started this interview for our podcast that, I'm pretty lucky. I've got to meet a lot of icons of the business, and I'll tell the quick story about how I figured out how this all worked. Sharon and I have a daughter that is a nurse in Boseman, and I drove by a dairy farm here about 3 miles from her home. Didn't realize who it was. And then at World Dairy Expo last year, I met Mark Tatarka, who is the president of Select Sires board today. And we put it all together. So Mr. Tatarka, that's how I figured out where you were and how I could connect to you. So good morning and welcome. So we're going to just walk through a little history. And I wanted to start out. We were just starting to have a great discussion. Tell us about this farm and how long you've been doing this.
I'll tell you a little bit about my parents first. My dad came from Czechoslovakia. When he came, he worked in coal mines in Wyoming. And then he bought into a general store, and he always wanted to go farming. And then, I guess when I was 1 year old, we moved up here to Montana. And in 1942, we moved on to the place that we're on now. Then we expanded since then. We got 500 acres right in this area. I'm number 9 of 10 kids.
So 10 kids, did any of them go into dairy other than you?
No. I don't know why. I was always interested in cows. And even when I was in high school, I milked the cow. We milked 18 cows. I did that at 9 in the morning. But then my older brothers, they decided there was better ways to make a living. But eventually they came back to near the farm anyway.
Sure.
They helped me out a lot. I was the youngest son, but my brothers helped me. There's no doubt about that.
That's great. And move on to a little bit about your family.
Well, my wife and I it'll be 59 years in August that we were married.
Wow.
And we got 5 kids. Mark's the oldest. We got Marie, who was a lab tech for a while until she retired, and now she's a full-time dairy person. She does a lot of the milking, and she does the groundwork, so that you can say the mowing and all that. She does that.
Sure. I just met her milking cows in the parlor this morning.
Tom, he's the do-it-all guy. He's the most important one because he can fix anything and does that. And then Ann, she's got a full-time job, and she helps milk several evenings. And Tim is the only one that's not directly involved with the farm. He's a lawyer in Billings, but he comes home weekends. He helps us if we need some help. He'll be here to help. They all got college education.
Well, that's fantastic. That's quite a compliment to you and your wife.
And by the way, they all go to church on Sunday.
That's another plus as well. You've raised them well. How many grandchildren?
Mark's got 4 boys, and then Tom's got a girl, and a boy.
Great. That's a great recap of the family. At Showbox, we talk a lot about families of cows, but also the family of the people, because your family is like a lot of people we deal with. They're the right kind of people, right? That's how we gravitate to each other.
What does life on the cutting edge mean to alfalfa grower Dan Sheps?
Carb Extra has been very consistent on our test results from first crop through fourth crop. The higher quality has allowed us to feed less byproducts and feed more alfalfa haylage in our diet. And cows are able to have a higher intake with a higher quality forage.
Hear more of Dan's story at harvextra.com.
So tell me, what year would you have graduated from high school?
1956.
Okay. And I guess we can tell our viewers they're not going to believe you're this much older than me, but do you mind telling them how many birthdays you've had?
87.
Wow. I will tell our listeners, and you'll get to see it a bit on the video. I'm not kidding you. This guy and I look like we're about 5 years difference in age. So you've got the longevity, but I think obviously hard work and the way you live has something to do with that, right? So you started to tell me about the old green pickup in the yard.
Yeah. After I graduated from high school, I went to Carroll Colleges in Helena for 1 year, and I missed the cows, and I was home every weekend. So I figured I just will go to Montana State, which I did. And then every other day we milked in 10-gallon cans. All the dairies in this valley, like 75, they were all milked in cans. And then about that time required you get a bulk tank. Dad was not ready to spend the money on a bulk tank, but they said, well, you can bring it in cans. Then we had to haul it in every other day. I dropped it off on the way there, and they dumped it right away, and the cans were washed and put them in the truck. I got a little bit of static about some of my classmates up there. And sure tell when it's snowing time, you can hear them milk cans rattling.
I'll bet you did. But the old pickup is still out here in the yard then.
Yep. My grandson wants to restore it.
I think it'd be beautiful. Like I said, for our viewers, I'll take a picture of it by your pickup. So really, that is the early roots of what you've done here. Take us a little bit to the dairy and how many years you've been breeding registered Holsteins and a little of that story of the Mountain View prefix.
Just had grade cows, and my dad, I know he had a pretty good eye for cows because he could pick out some good ones. And the thing that we kind of disagreed on was that when he needed some cash, he'd go out there and pick all out the good heifers. So when I got out of college, then I took over, and I can't remember where I got the first when I bought the first registered cow. Then later on, I don't know, we were probably milking 40 cows, something like that. And maybe I had 10 registered cows, and somebody wanted to buy the herd. So I sold all the grades, bought some registered heifers and cows and stuff, and went on from there. But that would have had to been in early 70s.
So we're getting towards 50 years of breeding registered Holsteins, right, for sure.
Right.
And where did the prefix come from? Tell me about the prefix.
Well, we just liked the mountains, so we didn't want to put the whole thing in there. So we just did the Mountain View, and that's how we come up with the prefix.
Yeah, and as I sit here on your porch today, I'm looking. The views are spectacular. I'm looking across at a irrigated field and then snow-covered mountains off in the distance. One of the most beautiful parts of the world you could be in. Over your time of breeding registered Holsteins, you've certainly bred some great cows. Tell us about a few of your real great cows.
Well, probably the first big thing that got us going on it, Mark had his 4-H project, Elevation. She was the reserve junior champion All-American.
Wow.
And then I guess the next great thing is that Nadia,
yep,
which we had sold an interest in her to Papa George's.
Yep.
And she wound up being a 95-point cow.
That would have been Mountain View Jolt Nadia. Would that be right?
That is correct.
Yeah, she was a Jolt. And boy, Papa George has bred some great cattle.
Yeah.
Out of her. Were you good friends with Mr. Papa George?
Yes.
Yeah. What a great man.
Yep.
Always enjoyed talking cows with him as well.
Yeah. I mean, you got a story about that. We showed that cow, and we used to have a show here, state show.
Okay.
And we had a lot of interest. We'd had over 100 animals in there. So this valiant wound up being the champion as a 2-year-old. And fishing wasn't too good, so Henderson told Randy, "You want to go look at some cows?" And so he came in there, and he fell in love with that valiant.
Okay.
So he wound up buying a half interest in that valiant, and that was a pretty good deal for Mark because Dan Randy was a good guy to deal with.
Absolutely, one of the best. I'll make sure that we get that old classifier you're talking about from Illinois to listen to this because he's a good friend of mine, and anytime we can give him crap, we need to be on that. So
he said he finally made it right because he's the one that made her 94 points.
Well, that's a great story. I'll make sure Heinzman and I have that discussion. He scored some of my cows too low too, so
he scored here again. We had a great time.
He's a great cow man. We've had a lot of fun.
I'll tell you a story about that too. Henderson knew that Heinzman was coming up here to score, so he calls and wanted to know how I did. I said that rotten bugger was no better get those this time.
Oh, that's great.
Jim, we've had a good time.
Well,
good times.
And you told me this morning, Jim Henderson, who most of you listening to this podcast would know, lives just down the road here, not far away.
Don't see him often enough. But
yeah, I'm hoping I hook up with him. Tell me a little bit about the operation today. So tell me about your cows today. I hope we get to look at a few before I got to head out of here, but tell me about the herd.
We just scored here recently. Our BAA is 108.3.
Wow.
We classified 21 heifers, and 10 of them were very good and 16 good plus. 3-year-olds we had 23 second lactations, 13 very good and 3 good plus. And the older cows we had 18, 3 excellents and 12 very goods. There were 10 excellents and 46 very goods.
Wow.
21 good plus.
Well, and 10 excellents in this size herd is pretty impressive.
I'm pretty amazed at it myself.
well, you've still got the passion for it, isn't that right?
Right.
And you were telling me about a couple of your favorite bulls on the way over here to the porch. Tell our listeners a little about what you like right now.
I really liked all the aftershocks that we had. And we got some great cows out of the after. And then shuttle, we had some good shuttles. King Doc he's been terrific for us. We've got 391 points.
Wow. Yeah, and really, shuttle and aftershock, those kind of cows below a Doc, on the bottom side of the pedigree is a perfect cross, too.
Right,
so
yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. So tell me a little about, a couple other questions. Tell me about your mentors.
John Tennyson.
Okay.
I don't know. I think he come out here to judge or something. He came out and looked at the cows, and from then on we conversed quite a bit.
Yep.
And he was a great guy.
Yes. Very, very smart cowman.
Of course, Jim Henderson.
Yep.
Harry Papa George.
Okay.
Bill Wright. And there's a lot of other people, along the way. And,
yeah. But those are iconic names in your part of the world that have helped shape what you've done here for sure.
Right.
Those of us from the East, we think we're all so close together that all those people you'd think would be easy to get together. But here we have miles and miles and miles travel to get together.
Right.
For John Tennyson to come to you, it's almost like me coming from Vermont to you. It's that far, right?
Yeah. And I was out there a couple of times and bought a few cows from John.
What about you came back to Expos certainly in your career? Just once, okay. Well, we got to get you back there again.
Yeah, and I was back there when Nadia was back there, and I think she wound up she was in the top 10.
Yeah, okay, that must have been a thrill for you.
It was. The guy that I met back there that I have a lot of respect for is Hank Van Axel.
Yep. He's a good friend, good guy. He loves cows, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He thinks he's a good golfer, but he's a better cowman than he is a golfer.
Okay.
Well, and I'm sure you know Howard Binder as well out in this part of the world. Howard's a good friend.
Sold Howard a heifer one time, and she did real well.
Right. Yeah. He had a good Mountain View.
Sexy Eva.
And she ended up being in Vermont, I think, eventually at Lylehaven, didn't she? Sexy Eva or offspring of her. Might have Lylehaven or Gary Darling, one of those guys.
I can't remember.
No, I'm pretty sure Sexy Eva had a branch. She might have ended up in Vermont eventually or something at Gary Darling's or Ed Goals or one of those guys back there. Anybody in the business that you wish you'd have met that you never did?
Well, I'd like to meet Mike Ducket.
You would very much enjoy Mike and his wife Julie. He's as passionate about cows, and he's my partner in Showbox now. We own a lot of cows together. There's nobody like him. He's honest, sincere like you are, and we'll get you to meet Mike Ducket. If I have to fly him out here, that's what we're going to do.
That'd be good. Now, where's Semmers Holstein? Who owns that?
That's unbelievable herd. If you met Dan or Jordan, they are fantastic breeders, and they're just over there a little bit east of Duckets, and you walk through their herd and just cow after cow after cow. So you'd enjoy a visit there for sure. Yeah. They're great breeders and innovators of the business.
Right.
What traits are you looking for in breeding cows today? You're still quite passionate about it. Tell our viewers what they need to be looking for.
Good udders, good feet and legs, and I like the deep bodies and wide front ends, which is hard to find anymore.
It is.
And
where does your milk go? Does it go to a cheese factory?
No, it goes
fluid
milk.
Yeah, but still, those components are important, aren't they?
Right.
We might as well have something in our milk, and no sense of hauling it away, right?
Right.
And are you focused on high type breedings that in your herd? Have you got bulls that you're using today that you really are excited about?
Yeah, probably going to go back and use some more Doc.
Yeah.
And been using a lot of Renegade, Ranger Red, and we've got some good, couple of pretty good Helix that got good components. And one of them scored 86 points.
Great. If you had to pick a favorite cow in the whole breed, if you had a cow that you could get your hands on or did have your hands on, would there be a cow that just sticks out that you'd have loved to have either seen or worked with?
Well, I'd like to have a whole herd of Nadias.
You bet. I had a sneaking suspicion Nadia was going to come up high on that list.
I don't know. I guess I'd like to see some high type aftershocks.
Yeah, and there's a lot of those. Maybe none of them ever hit the show ring quite right, but I think, like you were saying with yours, there's going to be some granddaughters of aftershock that really do great things in the show ring. Well, one more piece, and then I really want to go look at a couple cows to leave these conversations with some advice. It's amazing how many young people we have that are driving tractors or milking their cows in the parlor listening to these podcasts. Give them some advice about breeding cattle first, and then we'll wrap up with some advice about life.
Just study pedigrees and study cows, and I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, that's how I did it.
If there's a skeleton in there, it'll pop up.
Right.
And what about life and dairy farming? And you've been married nearly 60 years. Got a great family. Got any keys for these young bucks?
Well, take a little more time off than I did.
Okay.
It's not all about cows.
Yep.
Cows are great, but you got to do other things too.
This has been really fun. It's an honor to meet iconic folks like yourself. Come look at your cows and talk about this. I think these are things that we can chronicle. We're lucky to have these forms of media that we can keep these.
Right.
There'll be a lot of people gain a lot out of this. Any parting thoughts before we move on?
Well, like I say, it's an honor to have met you and to be visited with you.
Thank you. Well, this wraps up this podcast. We thank you for listening to the Showbox Sires Evolution of the Great Cow. As we're working on Evolution of the Great Cow and talking about how cows have changed, there's certainly one of the most important pieces of great cows are great people. And for me to sit here in Boseman, Montana with Mr. Tatarka and talk to a legendary breeder certainly helps us tell the story of why cows have changed the way they have. We thank you for listening and invite you to watch for our next edition of our Showbox Sires podcast series.